been asked to. There we go. Great. So I'm Russell Henderson. I'm an aspiring CCAC leader tutor, but I'm not here to tutor you tonight. There are people here, many who are much more experienced than I am, and so I can see Ken McElroy. I can see Laurie Nish. And I'm sure there are plenty of you who that's true of. So I see my role tonight as really a facilitator for discussion and the sharing of ideas, the sharing of good practice. I've got some slides, so I'm going to take us through them, and hopefully they can act as the basis for discussion. And I've done a bit of research into kind of things that are changing, and then I've got some questions and some suggestions, but mostly I'm really keen to hear from yourselves. So I'll try and create some points throughout the presentation for people to really participate. Please do so. When I do that, just feel free to just come off mute and ask away, or put your point forward. I won't necessarily see the raised hands, but Charlotte can help with that. So if anyone wants to do a raised hand, or ask any questions in the chat as well, and I think Charlotte's going to keep an eye out. It's quite a kind of isolating experience for me when when I'm in the kind of screen sharing. So if you've got a point and I'm not giving you time, just jump in there, please. Okay, so just bear with me and I'll just get the screen on the go. Okay, hopefully you can see that. Thumbs up from someone. Anyone? Brilliant, fantastic. Okay, so navigation and chart work. I've got my email here. The slide will be up at the end, and we'll be sending out a reading list probably tomorrow. If you get any questions or suggestions or feedback, I'd really, really welcome it. Even if it's critical, probably particularly if it's critical, because that helps me improve. What's the aims for tonight? I think the key thing I want to say straight away is it's not a CNTP course. It's really I see this as collaborative. It's a community of practice. So keen to hear your thoughts. The kind of top level kind of structure I put here is I'm going to start off with having a look at our imperfect world, our beautifully imperfect world, and the challenges that comes with trying to navigate our way around that. How do we do that? Well, let's look at the charts, the maps, the tools, and the toys that we tend to obsess over. And I'll hopefully, I'll bring you up to speed with some of the phone calls and research that I've done in preparation for this, with some of the changes that seem to be happening. But then we'll just really, I'm hoping we're going to dive into kind of the keep it simple approach, and I'm really keen to hear your ideas about how you keep it simple. But simple's not, the same as easy, is it? So we'll do a wee kind of dive into some of the complexities that tend to come up, and then I'm going to have a quite warts and all kind of well, I'll ask a question about how we would go about finding out where we are, and then I'll show you an example of how I tried to do it, and you will see a myriad of holes there. So I'd welcome your thoughts about how else I could have gone about that. How would you go about it in the same situation? Okay. So our imperfect world. This is from we've got so many amazing tools these days to play with, haven't we? So from Google Earth, and you can see here it's like a Terry's chocolate orange, isn't it, with its lines of latitude and longitude. If we go in a wee bit, well, actually, before we do that, what's can anyone tell me for a latitude, a line of a line of latitude? What sort of distance is that? What does it represent? Any answers? Okay, well, I'll leave it with you, and then we'll bring it up when we come to we'll come to that again in a wee second. But keen for people to throw in answers as we go through things. So, how do you go about, taking this sphere and putting it into something that we can carry about with us, that we can use that we can mark our routes on, because we can't carry globes around with us. So on the left, we've got the Mercator projection, and that's responsible for when we look at, you can see, like, imagine there's a light at the center of the world, and it's throwing a shadow from the surface out onto a scroll that's wrapped around it, and it's wrapped around it at the equator. So the further north we get, the greater the distortion, and that's why when we're doing latitude and longitude, well, when the further north we go in our latitudes on our charts, we can get these, this like distance on paper, distance on a chart varies from degree to degree, and it can be quite significant. So clever people have got around this by turning it on its side, and they do the transverse Mercator projection. And instead of, doing the line of truth, as it were, the one that's closest to the equator, at the equator, they do that for the area that the chart is trying to represent. So that works well in charts which are only trying to cover a certain size of area, but obviously the bigger the area that you're trying to cover, the more you're getting distortion. So it's always worth checking, if you're using a chart, what type of projection it's using. Here we are in the UK, and we can see the degrees of latitude and longitude. So I'll just ask again, you can see here, we're going from 50 degrees north all the way up to, well, pretty much, what's that, 60, 61, so any thoughts on what the each degree might represent as a distance?
It's a way of measuring how far you are between the equator and the pole, whichever side of the equator you're on. So we'll say for Britain, it would be between you and the North Pole.
Yep, that's true. Absolutely.
Because if you take segments across.
Yep, great. Any additions? Anyone else want to add into that? Build out on that answer.
I was going to add the degree of latitude is 60 seconds within a degree, and each one of those seconds is 1 nautical mile, and that's consistent all the way up and down the planet. And now I've probably made a fool of myself. No,
you're fantastic. Thank you for that. That's the one I was hoping for. So that's brilliant. Okay. The other answer was correct too, but that's brilliant. Thank you. So, question: is the same true for if that's latitude? Is the same true for longitude? Someone shout out. There was a bit of an answer
longitude's north-south, and it was invented effectively to run through the Naval Academy in London, Greenwich Mean Time.
Absolutely, and you can see the prime meridian there. And this thing is that because it's because we're coming into because they're all converging at the top, and I'll just take it back so you can see it. You can see that lines of the distance between lines of longitude is going to vary depending upon your latitude. So it's not consistent in the way that lines of latitude are. So that's fantastic. So does any of this matter really? Because we've got lots of digital now. I mean, the whole world's covered with satellites. So really, why bother? About rolls of paper fit around our world. Well, it's not quite as simple as that, because our sphere it's not a perfect sphere. I mean, maybe it's perfect to you in your in your own experience, but it's a bit of a beat up, It's a bit of a beat up circle. So you can see here, you know, a kind of the green line, the squiggly green line is indicative of the hills, mountains, valleys, and general squashiness of our sphere. And that's going to make it quite hard to, you know, measure with satellites and relate to some form of even, consistent paper model. So there's different ones here on the left, and you've got the best fit is WGS 84. And that's the one which GPS tends to be recommended to sync up with. So it's always good if you're using a chart to just check to see what type of datum it's using. And on the right, you can see this is Straits of Dover, and these are three different datums, so different ways of measuring latitude and longitude from yeah, and you can see the distance involved between, you know, so it's the same point, the same theoretical point is actually, there's quite a bit of distance there. Each of the little squares in the middle is a 10-meter square, so you can see we're, you know, 134 meters on one of the axes there. Okay, so it's not, so I think, you know, we're starting to see there's some complexity already to it. So let's have a wee dive into some of the charts, maps, tools, and toys. And we'll keep it fun, which, you know, we use. We've got some pictures here of the stuff that, you know, we probably all use on our, you know, as part of on our deck. You know, so this is the interesting thing is we're on a really small craft.
Jump in, Russell. Sorry, there's a
Please.
question in the chat. What do AG, ED, and OS mean?
So they are, do you know, off the top of my head, I actually don't know what they do stand for. But they are different datums, so they're different models. So there's the yeah. So I think the WGS stands for World Geodetic Data System, and ED, I don't know. I'm not too sure. Does anyone know? Anyone else? Or wiser people than me here? Fire in. What I will do then is if anyone looks it up, Googles it, jump in, and if there's no answers tonight, I'll look it up and I'll share it in the answers that go around tomorrow. Great question. Keep them coming. Good. Yeah. So, you know, on our kayaks, we've got relatively small deck space. We're getting probably moved about a fair bit. So, you know, our tool set, we have to keep it simple. So we've got something to write, to take notes with, waterproof paper, probably a couple of different compasses, one attached to your kayak, and one that you might use for plotting yourself, and then your charts, and you know that you're going to work from, and probably, you know, some form of electronic device or devices as well, depending on your preferences. Definitely a mobile phone, I would have thought. Okay. I'm just going to kind of romp through some of the different chart options and some of the changes that are that seem to be happening. So you can see here, you know, the Admiralty charts. I think it's quite well known that they're discontinuing the paper versions, but they have decided to extend it. So they're now available. They're keeping the paper charts up until 2030, is what they're saying at the moment. The folios that were very popular aren't available anymore, but to make up for that, because it's all print on demand now, if you bulk purchase a series of individual charts from the small charts series, you can see there's kind of increasing discounts. So I'll just put that up there, and I'll send round again the link to that. and that's consistent across all of the resellers from Admiralty. So it's nice to see them kind of making an effort to, you know, they're recognising that there's still a need. Okay, some of you might use Imray. They've got wide coverage, as you can see there. I quite like them, you know. This is the one for the Firth of Forth area. They're very colourful, so you can see, and it's easy to see lights. I find it easier to see lights and buoys. So key navigation markers on these than on you know, the Admiralty. That's just my personal kind of feeling about them. But I was shocked in preparation for this to find out that they anticipate stopping all paper ones after this season, right, from Imray. So they're not planning to print anymore, and they're actively trying to sell the mapping division of the company or the charting division. And if they don't sell it, they're going to shutter it. So if you like these ones, now's a good time to buy them. So then, you know, yeah, you know, you might, there's kind of the West Coast. You might use, you know, some of their Imray digital tools. I love the Imray Tides Planner, and they're going to keep that going because it is very successful. But these two relatively recent products, they're going to shutter. So it's not even, you won't have your paper, and you won't have your digital from Imray. So it's a bit of a shocker. They are hoping to sell that as a going concern to somebody, but they're not revealing who you know they're in conversations with. So you know there's a threat there. I don't know if anyone uses these. You know, the Explore with Imray one's quite interesting because it kind of takes snippets of the sailing directions, you know, like the Clyde Cruising Club sailing directions, and it geolocates kind of key snippets of that in this kind of searchable app. Oh, that's great. Look at that. We've got an answer for the AG. Thank you, Laurie. Brilliant. Australian geodetic datum. I'm liking that. And ED50 from Andrew Thorburn is European datum. That's brilliant. OS is Ordnance Survey of Great Britain. Fantastic. Good. It's the collaboration's working. Great. Yeah. So you please do keep, you know, further insights and corrections coming in. My intention is to end this webinar far wiser than I started it, and I feel like that's already in play. So thank you. So times of change, and it's a time of change. It's quite difficult as a kayaker because we're not necessarily a big market for them, and it's not enough to make it viable for Imray. But our needs are very different from someone using a Raymarine chart plotter, which the digital version of Admiralty would run on. So what do we use? Well, this is Navionics. It's owned by Garmin. It's runs on app, and it's very good. It's not the cheapest of them, but it is excellent, and it does have has a kind of a combination of authoritative data and crowdsourced data. I mentioned this on the talk for everyone who was there last week, but just for everyone who doesn't know that, if you're using Garmin depth sounding equipment and you have signed agreement effectively, then your depth data is crowdsourced into Navionics. So it's a way to actually get quite up to date depth information, rather than be dependent on, say, 18th century lead soundings, which quite a lot of the UK actually is. Obviously, it depends upon the accuracy of the of the sonar and depth equipment that's being used, and that's it's not standardized. You have built into it, you have tidal information and marker information. So, you know, this year's, if we click on there, 735 Leith, and, you know, I've looked at it for tonight at 7:38. So there you go, in 15 minutes time. That's apparently what the tide's going to be doing at that marker, according to, you know, Navionics prediction. So it's, you know, it's a good, it's quite a good tool. You can see here as well the cardinal markers, and so that's, you know, something I was finding a wee bit hard to see on the Admiralty charts. So it's quite, you can zoom in and it's quite good, but this is perhaps where some aspects of the crowdsource approach does fall down. So if you go into a couple of those markers, you can see that the information for one of them isn't up to date, you know. So I mean, you could guess, you know, what that flashing light sequence is going to be, but it would be quite nice if it was actually authoritatively there. So it's just that it's good to just be aware that key information you're after might not be there as well. So it's perhaps not one to rely on as your only source of information. Okay. OS maps, you know, they continue to do the paper, and they also have, you know, a domestic consumer level print on demand, and which is actually really good. It's brilliant. And you can plot, plan, and you can also, as I've done here, you can overlay, you know, GPX from, you know, data you've captured on your journey if you want to see what your exact route was against what you planned. So it's, I think the OS is available both on desktop but also on your mobile. Does anyone use any of these you know, tools or different ones?
Yeah, I use OS Maps on a regular basis.
Great.
OS Maps.
Excellent. Excellent. Does anyone use anything different? Memory maps. I
have used Navionics as well on Garmin, but that was more for powerboat rather than for paddling. If I could afford to use it for paddling, then aye, that'd be good.
I've looked at Visit My Harbour for some information about, you know, just the, you know, the markers and the heights, tidal heights, you know, where I can.
Great. Good. So someone's mentioned, so I mean, there'll be lots, and feel free to, it's great to see people putting things into, you know, their favourites into the chat. So here's, you know, memory maps. So memory maps is, it's excellent. It allows you to print, well, it depends on which version you're using. If you're using the new memory map for all, it doesn't print on Mac, but they're planning to bring that in. So you have to use either the old Mac version or run parallels with Windows if you're on using Mac if you want the print functionality. And yeah, it's, you know, effectively the Admiralty charts are available. I spoke to or exchanged emails with you know, memory maps in preparation for this, and they did voice some disquiet about, you know, the consistency of supply of data from Admiralty. They've said that they're still getting it, and it's as they always have, but there has been unconfirmed mutterings that that might not always be the case. So it's just one to kind of keep an eye on. We'll maybe come to this kind of later on, but I know Ken's on the call, and Ken, I believe I've got a memory of you using Memory Map to toggle between OS and the Admiralty chart. Is that correct? It's not something I've done. Is it something anyone else has done?
Hi, Ken's not here. It's Sarah that's here.
Oh, hi, Sarah. Hi. Sorry, I saw him. I just saw him next to you, but he's headed
No,
off.
he
Great.
signed me in.
Brilliant. Is it something that you've done, Sarah? Do you toggle
I let
between?
him deal with these sort of things, but he does use memory maps.
Great. Clove, I think I saw you
Yeah,
putting your hand up on that.
Carolyn is, yes, I use memory map and I have the marine charts on there as well. So when you're paddling in shallow areas like Loch Fleet up our way, or down near in the Firth of Lorne and places like that, you can use the marine chart then to plot exactly where you are, to make sure that you're staying, for example, in the deeper channels. Obviously sandbanks and things move, you know, but it at least lets you see where the main channel can be, and you sort of don't stray too far off it if the tide's ebbing fast.
Great. Thank you. And thank you also to Simon Harbisher. Great. You're saying that we can toggle between any subscribed maps when planning. And that's one of the interesting thing, isn't it, about memory map, is that it does have lots, you know, it's not just one source of information. This here, has anyone looked at the Antares charts that you can get on memories map? I mean, they're a bit, so this is a wee bit geeky, you know, but it's kind of, you know, I think it's fascinating because it's, you know, it's a hobbyist movement. And you see on the right, all those red rectangles on the right are areas that have been charted by a group of enthusiasts. And, you know, they take great pains to ensure that the data they capture is as accurate as possible, and then they produce these beautiful, charts for very specific areas, and it's aimed obviously at yachts seeking harbour, safe harbour, but you never know. There might be some information in there that is relevant to a paddle that you're looking to undertake, and even if not, I think it's just there's something quite heartening about this kind of maritime nation of hobbyist enthusiasts carrying on the good work. One that I came across part of the research for this is Meridian. Does anyone use Meridian? So I've not used it, but I would love to now. It sounds really good. So it's a bit more expensive, a couple £100 for 860 raster charts, but it's the full Admiralty data set, and they say that they update that every quarter. And they also provide software as part of this, but it only runs on PC. So again, you'd have to run it on, if you use a Mac, you'd have to run it on Parallels. But you can print up to A2 from this. And if you wanted to just avoid the software part, I'll send around the email for the sort of account manager of that. You can ask them just for print only, and depending on volume, they'll produce that for you. So, maybe it's one that I'll be keeping an eye on, given all the other changes that seem to be happening.
Is that £180 per annum or £180 for a lifetime subscription?
That's a good point. I didn't check that, Laurie. Yeah, I will check. Yep. Apologies, I should have checked that. Yep. I'll do that, and I'll put it in the answers that go around. And this here is a sort of screen grab that he sent of Sound and Mull with using their software, but I've not had the chance to use it, so I can't vouch for it. Okay, and then if anyone is wanting to this is marine traffic. You know, it's starting to get more features in there, as well as just the you know, AIS information for those ships that are broadcasting that. So that was today in the 4th. Maybe just a kind of side kind of interest at the moment, or maybe of interest more if you're going over a busy shipping lane. Although probably phoning or radioing the appropriate harbour authority or port authority is probably more use than sitting watching AIS and trying to discern somebody's intentions. And all of these are available on mobile. Just some, you know, screen grabs of them there. Okay, so, you know, I think we do have this tendency, don't we, in kayaking to kind of like rabbit hole, like I just have, on the technology and the toys and, you know, all those things. But, you know, when we're out in the water, we really just want to try and keep it simple. So super keen to hear, you know, your thoughts about how we do keep it simple. So I'll kick that off by, you know, the DST, you know, pyramids, triangle. You could say it basically all kind of comes down to interactions of distance, speed, and time. So as long as you know where you want to go, and ideally know where you are, then you should be able to figure out the rest. And if you know where you set off from and when, you should know where you are, if you have a sense of what your speed is and how much time has elapsed. So I quite like this as just a way to just, you know, just remind ourselves that as long as we can measure 2 of those 3 things, we can work out the third. Nice and simple. What other simple things are there? I mean, this one here is from Gordon Brown's Sea Kayak manual, published by Pesla Press, which is superb. And, you know, he's got a quite human way to judge distance. I love this, but if I'm honest, I find it hard to remember when I'm on the water. You know, it's kind of, and then if I'm in a new landscape, I find it even harder because, you know, if I'm in a place where things are bigger or smaller than I'm used to, then it, you know, it throws things out. But there's a lot to be said for taking these kind of analogues as a guide. Does anyone else have a kind of a hack that they use? You know, a way of navigating, measuring things.
Pretty similar to that one there. Callum McCarroll, who's a coach, he did one as I think it was when he was doing his 5-star. His wee kind of study was on measuring distance. So he took a video from his kayak, basically doing the same as Gordon has done there, identifying things, but that meant you could see in the video how far away things are, and that's still available online if you look it up and find it.
Fantastic. If anyone could look, thanks for that, Laurie. And if you or anyone else can find that and put it in the chat, great. And if not, I'll try and find it to share. But that's a great example. I know his Callum McCarroll's videos they did on Sea State were very helpful. So I'd like to see this too. So here's some, you know, some other kind of keep it simple hacks, you know. And they're just the basics of good navigation. It's probably not that different from what you do on the hills, you know. So hand railing, you know, who would like to explain hand railing?
You run alongside something which you call a handrail. So the coast is on your left is the most obvious one, or the coast is on the right. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah. So it's about recognizable features, you know, try and pre-identify recognizable features and count them off. And the more systematic you are on that, the more successful it will be for you. So if you can predetermine from a chart or a map what's likely to be a recognizable feature on your journey, and then distances between them, and expected time between them, and then you just tick them off, then that can be a very reassuring way to travel without having to constantly pore over maps and charts. So yeah, great description, thank you, handrails. Aiming off, if you're going a crossing or going to a different shore, what does aiming off mean?
Aiming off might be taking into consideration wind or tide, or even poor visibility. If you want to hit a target, you will aim to the safe side, so to speak, where there's a bit more land or a recognizable feature, and take a bearing on it instead, or aim for that, so that you're guaranteed to not pass your target.
Fantastic, it's a great description. So yeah, just go to the safe side. So rather than aiming directly at something and then not knowing on which side of it you've arrived, if you aim off to and know that when you get to the coast, if you turn right or left, but predetermined, which way you're going to turn, and then move along the coast, you will find that clear marker. So it's just a way to systematically approach a target. But great description from Carol. Is it Caroline? Is it? Yeah. Thank you. Transits.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. We had a chuckle there. Who would like to tell us about transits?
You have 2 points, a church and a hill, and if you line them up, I always have to remind myself by moving my own head as to whether I'm moving left or right, as to which way I'm moving compared to the further of the 2 transits.
Great. So do you want to just, so that felt like you gave us the answer there, or was that still a question, as to which one is?
No, I quite often I will sit there with 2 fingers going left, right, because I always get it mixed up. Yeah,
okay. Well, let's have a look at a diagram for that. Remind me to come to stroke count again in a second, but we'll look at transits first of all. So you can see here in the bottom diagram, above Port Argus, we've got 2 intentional transits, so 2 markers on a hill. And what we're looking for is for them to be in line. If we're oops, someone want to add in? Yeah, okay, I'll just keep going on, but jump in if anyone wants to. So the point that's just been raised there is, how do you know, how in relation to those markers, foreground and background markers, how can you use that to figure out which direction you are, which side of things you're on? So here's a couple of diagrams which demonstrate that. I'll let you just look at them for a second. So does that make it clear which marker we should look to as being the indicator for our movement relative to the intended inline approach?
It's just when the 2 images converge.
Definitely when the 2 converge if we're inline, but if the rear one is out of line, then its relationship to the foregrounding marker, if there's increase, that is our indicator of our own direction of travel. So if the rear one's to the left, then we're moving to the left, or if it's to the south, we're moving to the south, vice versa. That makes sense. So it's just that point that was made earlier about, you know, because I have done the same, just sat in the kayak when I'm tired, trying to remember which moving my fingers around, but it's all that you don't want to be doing that when you're tired on the water. So the rear one as the indicator for the direction of change of movement. Okay. Before I move on, we mentioned stroke count. Does anyone measure their number of strokes for distances in different conditions? I'm sure some of you do.
No, I've been a bit lackadaisical about doing it in different conditions. We've done it as an exercise, sort of on the flat, to know how many, how many double. So each time your right hand comes over, that's one, So
Great.
Yeah, you might count and have so many in 100 meters. So the idea is that you know how many strokes you would normally take in 100 meters, but of course that can change dramatically if you then sit up, lean forward, dig in further against a strong wind perhaps, or whatever, but then the wind might hold you back as well. So it's a good idea to do it in different conditions. I'll put it on
And
my
even
to-do.
yeah, no, great. But even just having a rubric to go to, a kind of a basic, beginning of a reference, like, that's great. I mean, does anyone have an outline reference?
Oh, there's 37 strokes for somebody.
There is one person to another, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Great. Well, that's one to do. It's going to be very individual. So, that's it's a great one to do, like to just to measure it. And it's great for things, boring open crossings, or it's amazing for night navs, So it just kind of tunes you in. But you want to make sure that you know the distance that you're covering and that you're measuring the time as well. So
it's very, very much an approximation though, because of the variables of tidal flow and wind and how tired you are. Still gives you an idea, but there's lots of other bits to add into account when you're doing it.
Absolutely. Yep. Great. Okay. So simple. Well, that was the simple part, but that's that's probably as good as it gets, isn't it? Like, because simple's not the same as easy. Quite often, actually getting to simple is really, really hard. And just to kind of demonstrate just how hard it is, here's some complicated diagrams, which is from the handbook, the Yachtmaster's handbook. So this is them making it simple. This is your easy on the go reference guide. And obviously they're doing things from the luxury of a yacht. So they have greater stability, more tools. They can move around. I could probably lay things out on the table. And they're suggesting here that there's a few different ways to capture position. This is what we want to know, where we are. How do we find out where we are if we don't know where we are? So on the right hand side at the top, they've suggested a few different things. A charted transit, so we've just covered the transit, so if we can do that, that would be really good, and relate it to the chart. That's really powerful. We can't do radar. We can do compass bearings. So, and on the left, there's a bit of detail on that. Depth contours, that's kind of hard without a depth sounder. So, but maybe drying rocks or something like that could be an indicator. And then rising dipping distance. If anybody, I love the idea, but I don't know if anybody does that in a kayak. It's quite complicated. In your Reed's Almanac, there's a table of that allows for your height and the charted height of a lighthouse or a light source, and then it helps you calculate, and then it calculates distance in relation to the visibility point as a result of the curvature of the Earth. It's pretty technical stuff. So as you can see, we're pretty limited. What we can do, we're effectively having to just take position fixes, and do, they're saying here the best ones to do what they call the cocked hat, and you can see that in the middle and the left, which is you've got, you're taking 3 bearings and you're allowing the margin of error for each of them, but you end up with an area of likely incidence. You're possibly somewhere within that overlapping diamond in the middle there, and you can see that if you just took 2 points, which are the bottom left, then actually your margin for error is much greater. But I mean, I don't know, does anyone here, take 3 position points when they're in their sea kayak? I mean, I can't think of a time when I have. I think I might set it as a challenge going forward, but we're bouncing about all over the place and we're moving, so taking 3 points and hoping them to, that seems quite tricky. Okay, so I suppose what I'm getting to here is the difficulty of actually knowing where you are. If you haven't planned to know where you are, and you don't now know where you are, that could be problematic. So I think the big thing is just plan to know where you are. Use that DST, distance, speed and time as much as possible. Use the hand railing, plan for your journey for recognizable features. Plan for bearings. You could run off a single bearing here if it was planned, if you knew if it was one that you're looking out for. Or you could just fall back to your digital tools, But that's kind of lazy, isn't it? And they've all got to be working, and they've all got to be working perfectly. So I've got 4. So I took this is measurements I took on 4 different GPS devices from a flat today, and you can see the variation. There's in fact there's quite considerable variation when you look at the VHF GPS in comparison to the others. So it's not that straightforward. I set the 4 different kind of devices that I'm using here. Is obviously there's a DSC GPS VHF, in the middle. Next to that on the left hand side is the memory map interface, and you can use that to you can toggle. I think it's 2 touches. You need practice to know which 2 touches it is, but there's 2, and within 2 touches you could get to that screen to get your lat long. On the left is Navionics. I think that's 2 touches again, maybe even just 1 actually once you've opened it up. And then on the extreme right is my, and that's just like a Garmin Forerunner 55, which is one of their cheaper sports watches, and you can download from their app store for free a positioning app, and that's 2 clicks to get to that. And I can also set it to give OS as well, or instead, should I wish. So I find that quite a handy one. A thing that I will do in terms of the sort of pre-planning approach with these devices is the one that I use most is the watch. So I set my Garmin to buzz every kilometre, and I start, when I start my paddles, I click it, and we've got here from Mike. I'll just finish on that. Yeah, so I've got this. The Garmin just buzzes every kilometre, and I don't have to look at it now. It's just part of my routine. So I'm just, as I'm paddling along, sometimes I don't even consciously register it, but it's there. Although it's quite a loud buzz and it's a loud ping now as well. So if I'm paddling with you, apologies for ruining your quiet every every kilometre. And then it also, you know, shows up in fact, you can customize it to show, you know, screens of distance travel and stuff like that. So a quick glance can give you a sense of, you know, how far you're coming along. I like that because it's everyday technology. It's the same stuff I'm using for running. So I'm not having to learn new habits on the water. It's just, you know, it's kind of tried and trusted, and it goes into my Strava at the end of or at the end of the trip, so I can see where I actually went. Yep. Okay, so Steve Bell, my mic seems not to be working. I was going to say a couple of things. For triangulation, you really need a sighting compass. That's a great point. But bobbling about on the sea makes it hard. The most important thing is keeping track of where you are. Brilliant, Steve. Perfectly said. Great, great. Well, I wish your mic was working because you're making great points. But if you're happy to keep typing them in instead, then that's really appreciated. So thank you for that. Yep. I've just shown the kind of the watch again, even though it's just on the. It's not on. I haven't set it up for OS, but just as a reminder that you can do it for OS quads. The OS Maps app can show you. In fact, there's what's it called? There is one that basically just shows you this here. You just click on it. It's one click, and this is all. And it brings this up. So I'll just. So I think my headphones might have done something. Can you all still hear me? Yep, great. So yeah, so if you want, you know, if you prefer to use OS, and many of us will, then all of these devices can pretty much be set up to do that as well. I don't use a GPS device other than my phone. Does anyone here?
I carry one, but I don't often use it.
Okay.
I used to use my Garmin on OS Maps, and when I was paddling out to Bell Rock, I fell off the map coverage on it.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, so that
Off the end of the world.
That was a wee surprise. So I now use my mobile phone with OS Maps because you don't fall off the edge of the map.
Brilliant. That's a great story. What was it that you were using, Laurie, before? Which make was it? Was it a Garmin, was it?
It was a Garmin, yeah, but the map coverage, because it was OS Maps for UK mainland, it dropped off at 10 miles offshore or something.
Wow. Does anyone else use them? And, you know, does anyone use them successfully? Okay. Well, so there we go. I thought I'll maybe I hope to find someone at some point who uses them, and you know, because they have all these fab features and how they use them. But it sounds like there's some salutary tales there for using better off with your phone.
Well, I would say if you had a Garmin that's got marine maps on it, that wouldn't have happened. It was because I was using a mountaineering Garmin for paddling with that happened. So don't. I'm not rubbishing Garmin. Okay,
cool, good. Okay, well, I don't have any. You know, I was hoping someone here could give us some information, but my apologies, it's not in my experience. So we'll just move swiftly along.
One other thing I might add about, you know, using some of these apps, if you're using OS Maps, for instance, and you're in an area of poor phone reception, you would have to have downloaded the appropriate maps before you go there, because if you suddenly decide that you're in fog somewhere, you've not downloaded the map, and you don't have a phone signal, you've got no maps to see where you are. But if you download them beforehand and they're downloaded onto your device, you've still got a GPS signal, and that still works. So, and that's the same on a few of the different apps.
Fantastic points, Laurie. In fact, you know, so just to reiterate that, the importance of checking that the software you're using does have an offline mode capacity, and then, you know, a good test of that is using airplane mode in your house, just to, you know, check it's working. But the other thing that's really interesting, you're just reminding me of some tales I've been told recently about people using mobile phones for their navigation, and then they have been in quite rough conditions and got thrown in the kayak, and the phone registered that as a major accident and sent off the automatic help kind of cry via Apple. Next thing is there's choppers in the air, helicopters, boats around them, and they were fine. They just rolled back up, but the it set that off. So it's just, if you're going to use your phone on the water, check that the things that those safety settings are appropriate for the type of activity and environment that you're in. And then also, I mean, with an iPhone, quite often it's a tilt to waking up, or tap the touchscreen to waking up. If your phone gets wet and you've got those settings, it can brick. So I've bricked iPhones or an iPhone in the past doing that, and I know I'm not the only one. So I button only startup. So it's just worth checking if you're using your consumer devices. Just building on the good point that Laurie made about download the information you need in advance when you've got a signal. So let's kind of play with this idea of where are we, just to kind of into this kind of final half hour. And I'm not I'm going to ask questions here that I don't necessarily know the answers to. We'll do one kind of theoretically just now, like in the fourth, and then I'll show you one where I attempted to play this game for real down near Dunbar, and it was fun, but finding out where you were at any given point was actually quite difficult, really. So if you were in the, let's just say you were going to do let's say you were going to go from Brick Beach, which is just to the left of Granton Harbour, just to the west of Granton Harbour there, and you were going to go up to Inchkeith, and then you anticipated that on the way back it would be a night nav. So what how would you plan for that? That's the question. How would you plan? How would you know? How would you go about planning for that, so that you knew where you were at all times? Any and I've got a few more screens and I can take us through that, but I think let's just open it up to question. Anyone throw in their ideas about what else would you want to know, and how would you record it so that this was a fun trip?
What the weather's doing, direction of tide, state of tide.
Great, excellent. Good. So let's say you've got that. Let's just say you're on your game with that, but you're and you have planned this to take best advantage of the tide in both directions, and but that means that your return journey is definitely going to be in the dark. So where else would you go for info?
I would like to be aware of what the lighthouse signals are going to be at Granton.
Brilliant, excellent. So here we've got it from great. So Laurie, to everyone, buoyage and signals, great. So we've got so you want to know what the lighthouse is at Granton, and you want to so here we are. What are we seeing? I mean, I'm not seeing much there at Granton. I'm seeing something. I've seen a lot up at Oxcars. and then I'm seeing stuff round by Leith. So there's a little bit just that, yeah. So it's quite interesting. There's actually not necessarily a lot of information there, is there? And then let's just say that that was enough for you. Let's just say, okay, you were like, that's fine. The next question then might be, you know, how do you want to capture all this so that you can easily refer to it at night on the water? Do you want to be toggling between this, which is maybe what you're comfortable judging distance by, and this? Do you think your night vision will allow you to work out colours of lights?
You could plot a course in advance and work out bearings, and you could, for example, decide to not paddle a straight line, but paddle to a couple of buoys. There's a string of buoys there. You could paddle from buoy to buoy, and then and therefore plan your bearings, write down your bearings from each, and then take a bearing on Granton and go that way. You could do
fantastic.
You could do something like that. In terms of planning a night nav, you've got all the other things like awareness of shipping and lights and keeping your group together and having an all-round white light.
Great. So love your idea about, you know, planning a route. And you've mentioned, you know, there's some cardinal markers. So that's great. And you can see that those cardinal markers are usefully out of the shipping lane. So that's great. So if you use them as your handrail, you should be fairly safe, you should be away from that. But is this, and so I totally agree with everything you've said. I'm just, Steve, what's that? Are there any obvious landmarks that are illuminated at night?
Yes, like Edinburgh Castle.
Great. Yeah, that's a great point.
Forth Road Bridge.
So the bridges for sure, yeah. The bridges are going to be brilliant.
Also, it depends very much on the group. If you've got a group and you're the stronger paddler, you know, have you got an emergency? You know, where are you going to run to if it all goes south? Well, probably south anyway, but yeah, where's your emergency beaches? Are you going to aim off and then follow the coast up, or are you confident enough in your navigation and buoys just to go straight to where you started from? And then the other exercises you want to run in the middle.
Brilliant.
To me, the obvious and perhaps one you paddle out in daylight to Inchkeith, and then you turn around and you've just got to concentrate on going back. It becomes more tricky when you go out in dark and then have to find Inchkeith in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
I would anticipate.
Yep. I mean, that would certainly be quite, you need to be quite confident to just be going out in dark and finding it in the dark. So, yeah.
I sort of got distracted on something else, but I don't know if somebody's mentioned about the light off, is it around Oxcar? You've got the red and you've got the yellow. So depending on what segment you are will determine where you are on the chart, where you are on that area, in terms of,
superb.
The chart. Yeah.
That's brilliant, Maria. Absolutely. And I think that's really interesting in relation to, it brings together a few points that we made, So it's been mentioned the idea of you don't necessarily go in a straight line. There's potentially a hazard there at the small vessel anchorage. We don't really know if that's a busy small, anchorage. We don't know what's going on. So we might want to give that a, bit of space. So we might want to paddle beyond, and this, kind of yellow to or white to red light cut-off point allows us to follow the line of the from the cardinal markers to Cow and Calves or towards Inchmickery, and then we can head south to get the as Maria has mentioned. So that's a really strong answer. But we'd probably be looking for some form of landmark on the south coast to act as our indicator. Can we see one? Can we see anything there that might act as that indicator?
You've got the gas holder. I don't know if that's lit up.
Great. So, you know, it's going to be a large, so the gas holder is going to be large, even if it's not lit, it's probably going to be silhouetted against a relatively urban skyline. So that's a really good one.
Is that a radio mast to the left of the gas holder?
Indeed, it looks like it, doesn't it? Yeah,
So that'll be lit.
Yep. So there's no information about how it's lit, but hopefully that would be, you know, so it's just great. So then I'm just going to, I suppose the question is, where do you capture all this information, you know, as well? If you go to, because, you know, these are, that's another zoom or another from memory maps. So, you know, that might be easier to write things in, but it might have less information to your first view. That's got a lot of information. Are you going to be able to read that at night on, you know? And if you go to something like, okay, so this is slightly further into the fourth, but I love the simplicity of these diagrams that Doug Cooper did this one in the Pesler Press kind of guide. And if we took the spirit of that, you know, what else would we want? You know, is there an argument for producing our own version of that for our journeys? And so that we've got something that's super simple to refer to, only has the information that we've pre-identified to help us know where we're going to be, and what else, you know, what else would we put into that in order to make it the most useful for us? And I think we've kind of got a lot of the answers already from yourselves tonight for, you know, our abstract journey in the fourth. So I'm going to then take you a wee bit further round, you know, down towards Dunbar with an example that I had, if that's okay, unless anyone wants to chip in any questions or comments or suggestions about this fourth example. Okay, so this is one that I did, and you know, there's as a night nav one for going from Dunbar up to Seacliff in the afternoon, and then after dusk going across to Bass Rock, round that, and then back to Dunbar. And beautiful, absolutely stunning evening or night for it, but no moon, so very dark. Calm water, but a swell running, so a wee bit of surf. And I went very minimal here on it, and you know, the question is, what else could I have put in here? And I focused on, you'll see there's a light in the Bass Rock, there's a cardinal marker just off Seacliff, and then there is an identified light at the harbour, or a couple of lights. You know, there's a transit light and there's the entrance lights way down at Dunbar Harbour, and then I just put the NT. You know, I just put the OS references for my evac points. You know, that I thought if things went wrong, those were my get outs. But I have to say, on the way back, you know, it was difficult at points to know exactly where I was. And so what else could I put in here?
Suppose you could put in distance and how long it might take you to paddle that distance, so you can kind of gauge where you should be along that kind of coast.
Brilliant, excellent. So the DST, perfect, great. So interestingly, I ended up using, once I kind of realised this was a problem once I got out to the Bass Rock, and then so I was like, okay, I'll time, and then I'll also do stroke counts for those conditions at night, and that was useful to a point, but it's not something I was wanting. I wasn't wanting to stroke count my whole way down the coast, but yeah, so some timing plannings would have been useful. Anything else? I'll go to, you know, this here's the ignore the red. Sorry, I just couldn't figure out how to switch that track off. But anyway, but otherwise you can see here. There's not a huge amount of other visual information. There's not a lot of other information available, unless there's anyone seeing anything that I should have taken account of.
There's a large buoy in the middle of Belhaven Bay, isn't there?
There is. Yep. So you can see that there.
Or was that on your map?
So you can see it on. It's just it's the yellow. It's a special marker. I think it's actually a pipe. I think it's a sewage pipeline. It's an outfall one. So you can see there the Y special marker. So that would have been a good one. Absolutely, I didn't have that in.
I don't think it's lit though.
It's not lit. No.
It's very big.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big in real life. Yeah, but it would have been a good one to aim for. Good. Any other?
I'm not familiar looking at it from this side, from the south side. If there's anything on the north side that would readily use as a fix, because obviously that's not included in your current map.
There we are. Hi, I'm Caroline's husband. I just dropped in. There's something just to the south of the Bass Rock by the coast, and it appears to be partway between Bass Rock and Great Car and the Rogers. It appears to be a marker buoy with the two black arrows pointing upwards.
Yeah,
absolutely.
South Car buoy.
Oh, you've got it on there, yes.
So I had that there, and that was really helpful to have.
There's Tantal and Castle on the cliff top as well, but it depends how black the night is.
Yeah. So the night was black, and the thing that was really interesting was so if you look at the town, so this idea of kind of trying to pre-identify lights is I found that really quite difficult. So there was a golf range that was active that night at the golf club, which I had never been aware of before. And it was really, it wasn't until we got quite close to it, we really actually realised what it was, but it became something to aim for. But we just weren't too sure where that was on that headland of Dunbar. So it was useful, and it wasn't that critical, but to kind of test ourselves, we had set a meet point of just inside the river mouth, just down at the kind of southeast corner of Belhaven Bay, it's called Beal Water. So actually that the golf house lights were, I hadn't realised that I misidentified them. I thought that they were further, they were the leisure centre lights, which were further west. So I ended up having to correct, and I ended up because I couldn't understand the lights, I hadn't pre-read them or done a kind of night recce, night recce of what the lights were. I ended up handlebarring the coast and using the sound of the surf and the swell, and just staying on the safe side of it as my indicator for getting close enough to the river mouth to be able to get in there. But
did you find the big yellow buoy?
Sorry?
Did you find the big yellow buoy?
No, I didn't. And, because I never marked it to aim for, and it wasn't until afterwards I thought that should have. So it was great that it was mentioned here. So it was brilliant. Someone's recognised it here, and I missed it. It was, I got that wrong. So, every day is a school day. Yeah. Good. So I think that's all the slides I've got to kind of take things through, take us through. I'd be keen to do two things really. One is reach out to me afterwards if you wish with any questions or follow up. We'll be sending out an email with reading lists, and I'll try to answer any questions that I haven't got the answer to. But I think actually they've been mostly answered. I think you're a knowledgeable group who have provided your own answers to your questions. But do feel free to reach out. but if anyone would like to stay on and share their own experiences, any ideas, that would be great to hear. And any questions? Thank you.
Russell, so you tend to rely on your sort of tracking devices, your navigation devices, rather than doing compass work. Is that right?
I would. So I think it's good to my compass work could be better, and so I need to work on it more. I need to be more disciplined about using it. So I suppose what do I do? I probably use the distance, speed, time, and I cheat by using the audio signal of the 1 kilometer, and then I'll that's just become a habit for me, and I'll just kind of have a look and go, okay, that's X amount of times passed. That means my pace is okay. I'm above or below or on what I would expect to be, but that doesn't mean that I'm always.
Yeah,
yep,
so that's on your navigation device, this 1 kilometer.
Yeah, well,
yeah,
that's on my on my watch. So it's
on
just
your
my
watch. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, doing doing some doing reverse bearings perhaps is what would have been useful. Up to the Bass Rock. So that's maybe so that's an area I need to improve.
So maybe an on the water opportunity for some practice for all of us.
Oh yes, yes, always.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Any other questions or suggestions? Steve, is your mic working? Yeah, are you? Oh no. Oh, because your comments have been fantastic, so thank you for that. Anyone got an interesting story or an example of their own navigational journey that they would like to share? I'll just follow up with Steve's point there about the surf. I mean, I have to say that was I love that. I think it fits, and we mentioned it, didn't we? And we talked about this a bit last time, and I think was it yourself who mentioned listening to the sound of the tide turning? I just, night navs and that is just incredible. But the sound of the surf there was both hypnotizing, beautiful, and reassuring. It really handrailed us right the way into the river mouth. So yeah, just wonderful.
I have a question, Russell, and that was what was your actual distance in the pitch black then from Dunbar to round? Did you go to Bass Rock or did you go round it as well?
Went round it. So that was lovely. With bioluminescence in the water, which was just I'd never experienced that on the East Coast before. It was just extraordinary. So that was stunning there. So I can't remember. I've got it on. I could look it up.
Yeah, I didn't kind of count the squares on the OS map that you put up. I was just wondering if it was in the real black of night, if it was that dark and there weren't that many lights, whether anyone in your group sort of had wobblies, as it were, with the dark.
No, it was so everyone had. I mean, it was just it was quite a special night. It felt like because it was really, although there was swell, it was really calm. There was hardly in fact, there was pretty much no wind. It was really dark, no moon. So once we'd kind of I think the thing that switched it for everybody. So we waited until it was pitch dark before we left Seacliff. And then you're aiming for, the Bass Rock, and it's beautiful. It's a special place, but the light is, a very clear, kind of guide for you there. But the bioluminescence was the game changer. It was just I just felt like a privilege, and so everybody just, was just Yeah, it was like yeah, just stunning, absolutely stunning. I'd definitely like to do more, and those were beatific conditions. So to do it in more challenging conditions, I think that would be be interesting, more challenging, and more opportunities for learning. Or maybe I would just bail out, go scurrying back the way. Who knows?
Thank you.
We were doing some night nav on the north coast with Doug Cooper a couple of years ago, and it's very different from your part of the world because there's almost no light whatsoever. And we were setting our measurements with compasses with our own little torches and so on, and then looking for some kind of a landmark. And in the end, the thing that was in the right place was about the dimmest star you've ever seen in your life. And that was fine because it was a clear sky. But obviously, if something had come down, we'd have had to have recalculated it. Mind you, our last night nav that we were setting up like that, and there was a much brighter light, which we thought, oh, that's a good one to aim for. And then noticed it was moving. It was actually a ship, so I don't recommend that.
Yep. I think there's a great point that's been made by Duncan there about sometimes you've got to make an explicit choice between having light and being able to read the charts, or no light but better night vision. We chose for that journey to be with, it was complete blackout, no lights. So just preserve night vision. And it's amazing just how, you tune into that. It's stunning. Great point, Duncan. And lovely to hear about, your celestial navigation. That's beyond me. I would love to have that knowledge. That would be amazing. Yeah. Great. Any other stories that anyone would like to share? Okay. Well, look, I think we'll just wrap it up there. Thank you so much, for joining, and thanks, for all your input. That's I've learned things. I've learned from yourself, so thank you. Next week's is on expedition kayaking. And I'll be joined by Will Copestake Goodall, who has extensive expedition experience in the Southern Hemisphere kayaking as well as the Northern Hemisphere. So, please come back, tune in, and I'm really looking forward to learning from Will and yourselves. Cheers.
Thank you.